Send this link out.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the third edition of SEC Live. I am Matthew, your host. Next to me is my co-host Tyler. That is his Twitter right there, Tyler Boy 7_722 on Twitter. That is my Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, right there. I am the SEC host, as you guys know. I'm also the Texas channel host. Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time for Texas, 8 p.m. Eastern Time Tuesday for SEC. Also, if you don't want to look at us and just want to listen to us, go to your favorite audio platform, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. We're right there as well. Just type in Voice of College Football. You'll get whatever pops up. Find the SEC channel, and you will see that. And then Mark, schedule announcement, not Monday through Friday anymore. Monday through Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And then Thursday and Friday, post-game shows, as well as I believe he's still doing the Sunday morning show. So go over there and check that out as well. And please, guys, like and subscribe here as well. It really helps out what we're trying to build here, this channel. So thank you guys for that. So a busy weekend in the SEC. Alabama and Georgia headlining that. And Tyler, our resident Georgia fan, is now out on the chances, down on the chances of the Dogs making the playoffs. So my question to you guys and him as well, if they don't make it, who can make the playoffs? Or are you retracting that statement? Do you think Georgia can still make the playoffs or will make the playoffs?
Well, Georgia definitely still can. The thing is, I was very emotional after that loss to Alabama. Man, that was just a tough way to lose. You go down 28-0. And then 30-7, but then start to come back. You're still down 18 points in the fourth quarter. And I'm like, it's pretty much over. Next thing you know, we score a touchdown. Cool, get a quick stop because Alabama's still throwing the football. I mean, give them credit, I guess. But next thing you know, you're on top and you're feeling really, really good. Boom, Ryan Williams just stole the souls of me, Humphrey on that defensive play, as well as Bolden. Two younger DBs, though, which is something you could look at. But I mean, Ryan Williams is insane. He's 17 years old, 200 yards receiving, clearly the best game of his life against us. And, I have to eat my own crow on that because, remember, last week I said, I bet you he was going to be completely shut down. Boy, oh boy, was I wrong. So everyone can laugh at me at that. But with UGA, the schedule's tough. It's brutal. Georgia plays a total of probably 5 top 15 teams. Clemson, Alabama, those two, they went 1-1. At Texas in a couple of weeks. At Ole Miss and Tennessee back-to-back. At home against Tennessee. So the schedule is brutal for the Dogs. Sandwiched in the Florida game. Listen, I get it. Florida is a team that's, kind of a laughingstock right now. Especially, we'll talk about this later on. They play UCF. But that's a rivalry game. Georgia Tech's another rivalry game. Again, that one's at home, but still, the last time Georgia lost to Georgia Tech was at home back in 2016, Kirby's first year. So, Georgia definitely has a shot. Now, are they a guarantee? No. That win against Clemson, though, is huge. We could look down the season if Clemson goes, let's say Georgia does go 10-2, they're in. But they end up going 9-3, let's say losing to Ole Miss, losing to Texas, both on the road, but beating Tennessee. Having that win against Clemson could be detrimental because I don't necessarily think that you could put Clemson above Georgia, especially with 2 losses. You kind of disagree with me. Georgia at 9-3, I feel like Georgia is going to go 9-3. I watched them in that first half. They look very, very bad. You said they would go 10-2. Regardless, if Georgia goes 10-2, they're in. 9-3, they're out. As simple as that. I think we both. Well, I think you would disagree with me on that because, Georgia would have 2 top 15 wins more than likely. But at the same time, I don't know how a 9-3 SEC team could find themselves into the playoffs unless it's a 11 seed, I guess. But look at the other teams in the Big Ten, and as well as Clemson and Miami. If Clemson beats Miami in the ACC title, don't you think both of them would get in? And then you would have the 3 losses Georgia lost to. They would be ahead of Georgia. So for me, it's hard for me to see a 9-3 UGA in unless a lot more chaos starts to happen.
Yeah, so there is a weird scenario I just thought of. If Clemson somehow does lose another regular season game, but then beats Miami in the championship game, but Miami is undefeated at that point, and Georgia's 9-3, I'm putting Georgia at 9-3 over one loss to Miami. Miami's schedule is god awful. God awful. I don't care because to me, yes, they're 9-3, but if you put Miami up and they played the same schedule, I think they're 9-3 at best. Like, I don't think especially after watching that Virginia Tech game. Now, again, this is what I've seen so far, so that's what I have to judge on. I don't have, the crystal ball in my hand, able to rub it and look into the future and see how this looks. Now, if they go on a run and just dismantle teams like they should on that schedule, then I would change my mind. But if we're talking about a couple nail-biter wins in there versus that schedule, I personally believe Georgia should get in like 9-3 over an 11-1 Miami team. But again, I don't have the crystal ball, so I don't know. I do think another scenario too, like I just don't see how the Big Ten could get 4 teams in. And then in this scenario, that would really only put 3 SEC teams in, unless someone else pops up. But I have some teams written down. We can go through that in a second that could get in, I guess. But to me, I just don't see how the SEC, which is still the best conference in America, only gets 3 in, and the Big Ten would get 4 in this scenario, because the 4, in my opinion, would probably be Penn State, Oregon, Michigan, or USC, and then Ohio State. I think you would have to put a 4 team in the SEC, and if you're going to do that, I think it'd be a disservice to leave out a 4 team from the SEC. But so some of these teams and like that are in the mix, in my opinion, it would be Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, A&M, and Missouri. Obviously, we both agree Missouri. Do we think they're going to make the playoffs? No. Do we think they're overrated? Yes. But could they? Yes, absolutely they could, because their schedule is very easy. And we'll get into the A&M and Missouri game later. But out of those teams I just mentioned, if you do take Georgia out of it, Tyler, who do you think would get in out of LSU, Ole Miss, A&M, and Missouri?
What I would – so if Georgia does lose that third game, I personally believe it would be to Ole Miss, so I would put Ole Miss ahead of Georgia. They would be 10-2 more than likely. Let's say they run the table, I guess lose to LSU, and then beat Georgia. Yeah, Ole Miss would get in over Georgia. That's kind of who my 4th team was if Georgia were to go 9-3. I'm so close between 9-3 and 10-2 for UGA. It's this schedule is ridiculous. So, and if Georgia first half Georgia plays anybody on the schedule, they might lose any game anywhere. Second half Georgia, like they did against Alabama, they could beat everyone on their schedule. But the problem with Georgia is they're a tale of 2 halves team. I don't understand how Georgia wasn't prepared in that first quarter. Really, what lost you the game was that first quarter. You gave up 21 points, and oh, by the way, Alabama's about to score again. So.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's kind of weird. The strategy, I actually kind of agreed with the strategy they used in the SEC championship game of spying Jalen Milroe. They did that more in the second half with 2 guys, and it seemed to work better because it forced him to stay in the pocket and throw more. And he's become a lot better passer. Like, that's pretty damn clear at this point. But is he still elite at it? No. But to me, what's surprising is Georgia's defensive line, to me, especially Michael Williams, has not been what he was brought up to be. Like, this guy has been talked about. Him and James Pierce, honestly, have not lived up to their billing. Like, at the beginning of the year, that they were talked about as number 1 picks coming out in the NFL draft. And right now, if you look at most mock drafts, like half of them don't even have them in the first round, either of those guys. So it's been like a complete disaster from those two. And obviously, Georgia's defensive line has suffered from that. And then also Warren Brinson being injured. Did he play in this game, by the way?
Yeah, he played.
So go ahead.
Here's the thing with Michael Williams. He was pretty good in the second half against Clemson, and then boom, Phil Maffa with that dirty hit. That's the difference in him, as his ankle is still injured. He didn't even look like he was 50%. He was barely out there in the second half, and to be honest, Georgia's defense had a little bit more success. But they ran that 3-3-5 all second half. That was kind of shocking to me. And it was working. When you run that 3-3-5, have those 3 down linemen, but then you have the 2 spies. Georgia had 2 spies, which is crazy. To me, that's crazy, but it worked. And kind of didn't really make sense why Alabama wasn't trying to run the football a little bit more, especially when you're up. I mean, I get it. DeBoer's an air raid type of guy, but still, your offensive line was doing really, really well. So that was kind of a head scratcher, but it was working for us in the second half. So I can't really complain.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. They were averaging over 5 yards per carry on the game. So in my opinion, they should have kept with the running game, especially in the second half, obviously, like you said, with the lead. But the thing that it's kind of weird because it played out in two different halves. I said, did Georgia have enough playmakers to exploit the weakness of the Alabama team, which is the secondary? Well, guess what? In the first half, they didn't. In the second half, apparently they did. Because they hit a bunch of bomb shots down the field versus that Alabama secondary. And my question, and it will be answered throughout the season because these teams play very good competition going forward, is the Alabama secondary really that weak? Or did Georgia actually find something with the playmakers down the field? So I don't know what the answer to that is right now because I didn't see it for a full game. I just saw it for a half. It's going to be interesting how those questions are answered going forward. But I will say this, the secondaries for both teams, honestly, have taken a step back from what we're used to. Like in Alabama, Georgia games of the past, you had like a ton of NFL talent, like first round guys running around back there. I like Starks at safety, but everyone else, I don't think there's a first round pick anywhere back there for either of those teams. So that can be exploited, in my opinion. And then also, if Georgia's not going to get that pass rush, then it can definitely be exploited. But that's the thing I talked about on the Texas show yesterday is people have this idea of elite teams in their head, and every year that standard changes. There's more. Some years there's more elite teams. Other years, there's less elite teams. Last year, I thought we had like legitimately 5 to 6 elite teams. Right now, I don't know if there's any like for sure elite teams. So it's going to be interesting if that number does jump up, or we're just in a down year all around in college football. And that happens, guys. This goes through cycles. I think COVID had a lot to do with it. And honestly, I had the schedules written down for these like playoff teams that I was considering. And A&M, to me, the schedule that they have, I don't really like the team as a whole, but they have a very manageable schedule, especially if they're able to get through Missouri this week. I mean, you have LSU at home. You have honestly, your two hardest games left after that are at South Carolina and Texas. If you can go 1-1 in those games and beat Missouri this week, there's a real chance at 10-2 you could make the playoff. You would be rooting at that point for Notre Dame to win out because it would absolutely kill your chances if Notre Dame loses 1 or 2 more games, in my opinion, and that would be one of your losses on your schedule off of a semi-weak schedule. But A&M definitely has a shot. Honestly, if I'm ranking these teams by most likely, I think A&M is my most likely if Georgia's not going to do it. I think A&M would take their spot, and then I would probably go LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri. I think Missouri for me has the least or the smallest shot out of the teams I mentioned in this out of the 4. I still think Georgia makes it right now. I still think it's going to be Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia. I think I had 4 SEC teams. I didn't have Tennessee originally. I had Ole Miss instead of Tennessee. I'm just switching preseason wise. I'm just switching Tennessee for Ole Miss.
Yeah, and I actually disagree. If A&M actually has to hope Notre Dame doesn't have that same record, because if they have head-to-head record, then Notre Dame is in front of them. But with Texas A&M, they should have beaten Notre Dame, if we're being honest here. They had their chances. They had way too many chances against Notre Dame. Then they choked that one away. For me, this Missouri-Texas A&M game is almost kind of like an elimination game, as if Missouri, I'll say this, if Missouri's able to go on the road in College Station and beat Texas A&M, where are the 3 other losses? You can't find them. In my opinion, you can't find them. Maybe I think they play at South Carolina.
Yeah,
I know they play Oklahoma. And
South Carolina, by the way, that's my dark horse. Like that defense is really damn good. Really damn good. And we'll get into that later too, but keep going with your point. Yeah,
it's just both teams have like legitimately easier schedules. A&M's is slightly tougher in my opinion, but that's kind of like an elimination game. It is for A&M because if they lose this game, they're not going to run the table, go 10-2. I'm sorry, I just don't see that happening. They own South Carolina. Give them credit. They do own South Carolina, or something like 10-1 or 11-1 versus South Carolina since they joined the SEC. And then I'm trying to think what other. Obviously, the Texas game. That's the game. That's a huge game because as of right now, that looks like A&M's going to come into that game probably 8-3, maybe 9-2, and then Texas 11-0 or 10-1. But that's a rivalry game. It's renewed. It hasn't been played since 2011. This was one of the most hyped games in all of college football in the preseason, and it still is. It has every chance to be as good, maybe better, because I do think Texas A&M is slightly better than what people thought. And that comes due to that offensive line, I think. Defensively, they're really, really good. But, yeah, if Missouri is able to go on the road in College Station, I'm not going to say they're a lock, but I certainly can't find 3 more losses.
Yeah, honestly, if they would have started the right quarterback from the beginning, they probably would have beat Notre Dame. So they definitely found the solution there. I mean, Marcel Reed has yet to turn the ball over. He has a better yards per attempt. He has a better accuracy. Like, he's better at literally everything than Connor Wakeman. So it was the right decision there for them to go with him. And then, Darrell, I know you're high on Kentucky, my friend, but Kentucky is not making the playoff. They're a good football team. They are. I had them at 8-4 going into the season. I think they can get that mark, but 8-4 and 9-3 is not getting you in the playoffs. So they basically have to play perfect football from here on out. I just don't see that happening because they still have a decently hard schedule going forward. I know they got to play Texas. And actually, guess what? In the preseason, I had Kentucky beating Texas. That was Texas' one loss because I really like your guys' defensive line, and that's proven to be definitely the strength of that football team. But I just don't see it. Brock Vandagriff is way too limited to me. He's just way too limited in the passing game.
Yeah, and they kind of already got their fluke win. Now, I will say this. They had their fluke loss against South Carolina anyway. They're a better team than South Carolina, at least in my opinion. Brock Vandagriff had the worst game of his life and probably any other quarterback's life of all time in that game. So he's starting to feel more comfortable. That was a huge win, though, for Kentucky. It was kind of Kentucky was going to win one of these flukish games because they just had one of their flukiest losses. If you go back to last year, they had a lot of closer games too. That's just kind of who Mark Stoops is. But they really chew that clock. They limit possessions, and they're a very physical team. So they're a tough go for pretty much everybody. I guess that's what we learned this weekend too.
Yeah, the problem I see with them, I call them the Michigan of the SEC. They have such a small lane to drive in because if they don't convert third downs and they don't convert in the red zone, they're going to get, like I said, one of these games that's going to happen. You don't do either of those things and you're going to get destroyed. Like, it's not even going to be close. That's what's going to happen because they have to win time of possession and they have to hold on to the football. You saw that versus Ole Miss. I think at one point it was like 41 minutes to like 14 minutes or something. It was something absurd. And that's like that. Your only way you can win football games is it's just not going to happen week in, week out. One of these weeks, it's going to go horribly wrong and you're going to get killed.
Yeah. Like the South Carolina game. That's literally exactly how that went.
Yeah. And that's why I think, like, it's going to happen again. It's too long of a season. You play too hard of a schedule. It's just going to happen again. Fluke win. We have been the best defense in America. I agree. Up until this point, you probably have been one. I'm not going to say the best, but you've been one of the best defenses. Kentucky almost beat Georgia. We'll just keep winning and keep doubting. The thing is, Darrell, you have 7 teams in the playoff right now. That's just not going to happen from the SEC because you're going to have at least 3 from the Big Ten. And then I think, that's 13 because 7, 3, and then you have the 2 conference winners. You're going to have the other outside shot too. So that's 13 teams. That's not possible.
Yeah.
Like 6 is the absolute most.
I mean, it was a fluke win. I hate to be like that. I don't want to be mean over here, but it was a fluke win. You had the ball 45 minutes to their 15. Ole Miss scored 17 points. They won't play another game in which they score 17 points. Not even Georgia. Georgia will give up points. I'm pretty worried about playing Ole Miss, especially now when all the pressure's on Georgia and Ole Miss because they both have losses early on into the season. Yeah, and that's right before we play Tennessee too. So it's a tough situation. But, yeah, that was pretty much a fluke win. That 4th down in 10 in which Brock Vandagriff threw a prayer to Baron Brown. I mean, hey, I love Baron Brown. I think he's one of the best wide receivers in the SEC. He could, if he was just about anywhere else, no offense, he would be probably in the top 10. He has that talent. He's Kentucky's most talented wide receiver I've seen in a long time. But come on.
Hey, Darrell. Kentucky was underdogs to Ole Miss. It doesn't matter. Does not matter. Vegas knows what they're doing, but they're not right 100% of the time. By the way, I am terrible at picking SEC games, Tyler. I think you're killing me on that. So when we get into that, trust Tyler more than me. But everything else, like for example, I made 13 bets this weekend. 13. I went
What?
10 of I won 10 of them. The
Oh.
two one of the loss I had was the only SEC game I bet. Arkansas and Texas A&M. I took Arkansas and they lost. Now I took them earlier in the week too, and they won that one. I got plus 5.5. I won that one, but I lost the 3.5 points. So Vegas finally found the right ground there on that game. But I did pretty well betting other than SEC. I've been atrocious at betting the SEC. But I'm not even these games I'm picking, guys, by the way. Most of the time, I'm not even laying money on them. I think I've done one game from last week and one game the week prior. So I've done it twice. And I don't think I bet on any of the games we're going to talk about today. But we are going to jump into those previews. But again, guys, please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Also, check out Mark's channel, the main channel, Monday through Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And then Thursday and Friday post-game shows. Also, if you don't want to watch us, but you want to listen to us, don't want to kill your phone's battery, you just want to look at our faces, go over to your favorite audio platform. Check us out there as well at the Voice of College Football. Thank you guys for that. And check the Amazon link in the description. A week from now, it's Prime Day. Does not change how you buy things, does not change the price of anything. Just puts a little bit of money in Mark's pocket. But let's get into these football games. I'm really excited, especially about this first one. Like you said, I do think it's an elimination game. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think it's going to tell me a lot about these teams going forward, especially Missouri coming off the bye week. Missouri's getting 2 points on the road versus Texas A&M. The over-under here is 48.5 points. I'm going to throw out some statistics for you guys. Missouri is averaging 31.7 points per game, which is 40th in the country. They're averaging 466.7 yards, which is 19th in the country. And guys, that tells me they're not really finishing drives. And when we get into red zone scoring, that is the case. They're only scoring on 92.31%, but that's 36 right now. Obviously, that will go down. Like if that's what they did the whole year, that'd be number one in the country. I don't think they're going to end up there. Yards per rush on offense, 25th in the country. Yards per rushing as a total in the game, they're 15th in the country. Yards per pass on offense, 6.9 yards per pass, which is 76 in the country. So honestly, they're not really getting the ball down the field. And then yards per game passing, 44th in the country with 251 yards per game passing. On the defensive side of the ball, they are 16th, giving up 16 points per game. They only give up 263.7 yards per game, which is 11th. They give up 4.6 yards per play, which is 29th. So they're pretty good at there as well. Rushing yards per play, 3.3, which is 24th in the country. Rushing yards a game, 103 yards, which is 19th in the country. Opponent yards per pass, 6.8, which is 52nd in the country. And opponent yards per game passing given up is 160.7, which is 17th in the country. And then Texas A&M on offense, they average 23.3 points per game, which is 78th in the country. Yards per play, 5.2, which is 79th in the country. Red zone scoring, they have been perfect in the red zone this year. So they're very good in the red zone. They're tied for first in the country there on offense. And then they're averaging 4.7 yards per carry, which is 45th in the country. Passing wise, they're having 6.3 yards per pass, which is 98th in the country, which is not good. And then yards per game passing, 115th in the country. So obviously they like to butter their bread. Running the ball, they not a very good passing team. Defensive wise, 20 points per game given up, 32nd in the country. Yards per game given up, 343.8, 47th in the country. Yards per play given up, 5.4, which is 58th in the country. Yards per pass given up, 6.8, 54th in the country. And sack percentage, they're only getting to the quarterback 5.52% of snaps, which is out of 100 dropbacks. You're only getting there 5 times. That's 66. Honestly, this defense, like I said last week versus Arkansas, has not been anywhere near what I thought they were going to be on the year, guys. I thought they were going to be much better than this on the year. But this game is very interesting to me. How do you see it, Tyler?
Well, I've been saying this for weeks. I think Texas A&M is going to beat Missouri. Missouri's kind of due for that loss. And to be honest with you, Missouri just hasn't been what I've heard they're supposed to be, in which there's going to be a legit top 10 team and a playoff team. They haven't been a playoff team all year. I'm sorry. I mean, their first 2 weeks, they played an FCS school and Buffalo. Okay, cool. Buffalo beat NIU, who beat, obviously, Notre Dame. But again, those 2 wins are not impressive. They didn't impress anybody when they barely beat Boston College. I will say this, though. Castellanos only had, I think, 30 yards rushing, and the next guy next to him had about 15. So they shut down the run against Boston College. And then, obviously, Vandy. They had to struggle themselves to win that game. They honestly shouldn't have won that game. Vandy found every way possible to lose that game. I like Texas A&M here. Now, here's the thing. I might get heat for this, but this is where I think Wigman actually would benefit Texas A&M a little bit more through the air. Missouri's secondary, I have yet to really, to be honest, I have yet to really see them be tested. This would be a good test. Now, Marcel Reed, he's been okay. I'm not going to lie and say he's been amazing. He's been okay. He did just enough, I would say, against Arkansas. Maybe give him credit for that last drive, but that was really their offensive line pushing through, and they finally were able to get some gaps in the rush game. And then Le'Veon Moss was able to do most of that dirty work there. But this Texas A&M front seven is elite. I mean, it's ridiculous. This defensive line is too deep at every position. Scorton, I mean, he's had, he hasn't had the breakout season that a lot of people said he was going to have, or as good as that, but still he had a couple big sacks in this game. I think he actually forced the game-winning fumble too, as well as York, a really good middle linebacker. I like Texas A&M here. I think this is a lower scoring game because Texas A&M's offense really isn't that good. If we're just being honest here, they're more of a rush team. Missouri can limit the rush, limit Texas A&M through the ground. The problem is, I think Texas A&M is going to be a little bit too much. This is what they do. This is exactly how the Arkansas game went. They wore out Arkansas in the fourth quarter. That's kind of what I feel. I think it's going to be a kind of a snoozer early on, and Texas A&M comes away with like a 24-17 type deal at home in College Station. So I'll take the under, but give me the Aggies at home to pull, I guess, the upset.
Like I said, always trust Tyler on these because I'm going the opposite. I'm going to take Missouri because I think on a down-to-down basis, they're actually not great versus the pass. They're like you said, they're much better versus the run. The problem is I don't think Marcel Reed and especially the weapons on Texas A&M are going to be able to hit them deep. And if you watch Missouri's defense versus like you said, Boston College and Vanderbilt, they were able to exploit it with the deep pass. I'm not going to be able to see that with Texas A&M because I don't think Texas A&M has the weapons nor the quarterback to do that. I do think they'll have some success running the ball because Colin Klein, that's what he does. He knows how to run the football. He knows how to design schemes, get angles in the running game to create holes for Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels and those guys, and Marcel Reed as well. So I think they'll have some success. I just think, like I said, not enough explosive plays are going to be generated here. I think Missouri will be able to create some explosive plays through the air with their wide receivers because that is the weakness of Texas A&M's team. They're better versus the run than the pass. So I think Brady Cook will have some success here. I'm going to take Missouri. I agree with you. I think it's a low-scoring game. I'm taking Missouri 23-20. So we're both on the under here, just on opposite sides. I'll take the 2 points. He's going to take Texas A&M, but I think it's a really good game. I expect low scoring. I'd be shocked if this turned into a shootout. I really would be because I just think both defenses all around are solid, and then I don't really love either quarterback here.
Well, I will say this about Texas A&M's wide receivers. They have an underrated wide receiving core that I really just haven't needed to throw the ball as much or had the right – not to down Marcel Reed, but I mean, he missed a lot of throws in that Arkansas game. I mean, that game could have potentially been a blowout, and he missed a couple of those throws, maybe misread some of those throws as well. But Cyrus Allen's really, really good. Noah Thomas, I like him. They started to get a groove on late into that game. But where is Moose Muhammad? This is Texas A&M's, or this who I thought was Texas A&M's most talented wide receiver. Where in the world is he? I see him pop in every now and then when he's on the field, breaking news that the pass game starts to connect. That's just what happened in the fourth quarter. It just makes no sense. Why is Moose Mohabit not seeing the field? I hope he's able to see the field in this game because he's a very, very talented and skilled wide receiver. You can put him just about anywhere. So I think they can actually. I actually like this wide receiving core, and by far, this is the best wide receiving core Missouri would play up to this point.
Yeah, I agree with that. They're definitely the best. Yeah, it's funny you said that because I said going into the season I thought he was their best wide receiver, and he's kind of gone AWOL with this team so far this year. He hasn't really been. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. He's definitely not his dad up to this point. His dad was a very, very good.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah, being a Panthers fan, when those were the good times. Let's go to the next game, which will include your Georgia Bulldogs.
Oof.
Auburn is getting a nice 24.5 points here. The over-under is 52.5. So Auburn on offense, we know they've been bad. They average 23.5 points per game, which is 77th in the country. Yards per game, 425.5. That's 43rd in the country. They average 6.4 yards per play, which is 28th in the country. They average 4.9 yards per carry, which is 39th in the country. And then yards per pass is actually surprising here. I was kind of surprised by this. I bet this is mostly because the wide receivers are making plays. 8.5 yards per pass for Auburn, which is 27th in the country. I was kind of surprised when I saw that. On the defensive side of the ball, they give up 22.8 points per game, which is 48th. They give up 351.3 yards, which is 50th in the country, and 5.1 yards per play, which is 46th in the country. They are giving up 6.8 yards per pass, which is 53rd in the country, and they also have a sack rate of 5.38, so they're not really getting after the quarterback. And they only give up, I thought they'd be a little bit lower here, but 3.9 yards per rush, which is 52nd in the country. And then Georgia, their defensive stats definitely took a hit here from last week. Georgia, but on offense, they scored 27 points per game, which is 66th. They have to get better on that on the offensive side of the ball. That's not good enough for what the amount of talent they have. 409 yards, which is 49th in the country. 6.3 yards per play, which is 29th in the country. Yards per rush is 4.2, which again thought would have been higher with the talent you have in the backfield, which is 69th in the country. Yards per pass is 8.2, which is high, which is 36th in the country. And then on the defensive side of the ball, they give up 18.7 points per game. Obviously, the Alabama game hurt that a little bit. 24th in the country. Yards per play, 5.2, which is 52nd in the country. On rushing against the rush, they're 3.9 yards per rush, 55th in the country. That took a big hit because I think last week it was like 1 point something. So that jumped up over 2 yards per rush, and then 7 yards per pass, which is 60th in the country. So honestly, I'm surprised with the Georgia defense, but obviously the Alabama game favors heavily in that. And then surprisingly with the Georgia offense, they do pass a little bit better than I thought they did. But what do you have to say about this game?
Well, I'm a Georgia fan. If any of you guys here are new, and a lot of these stats are skewed because Georgia in the first half, oh my goodness, their offense hasn't been clicking on cylinders. I mean, they scored 6 points against Clemson, 3 against Kentucky, had 7 against Alabama. You're not going to listen. If your offense comes out and does that week in, week out, you're gonna lose to a team that you shouldn't, and this could be that team. Auburn has lost 3 games in which they should have won. Auburn could easily be 5-0, but they sit there at 2-3, or at the least of it be 3-2. Shouldn't have lost to Cal, shouldn't have lost to Arkansas, should not have lost to Oklahoma. They had that game in the bag. And you make a great point. As Lambert Smith is averaging like 30 yards per catch, and I wish I was trolling. I think it's like 27.5 yards per catch, the Penn State transfer. So, yeah, I think Georgia, and I hope I'm right, I think Georgia's going to come out angry and upset with last week because I've seen Kirby Smart coach up his team after a loss, and usually, knock on wood, Georgia dominates. I want to see a Georgia team go in. This Georgia's first home game, or it's actually, second of the year. First home game since week 2, second home game of the season. It's week 6. So shout out to the SEC for that. But I think Georgia is finally going to start to click on cylinders. I hope Trevor Etienne is going to be able to wake up here and do a little bit more. I mean, he only has 1 touchdown on the season. Georgia's rush game hasn't been as good in that first quarter. I mean, you said we averaged 4 yards, I think, 4.2 I'm willing to bet you that we're averaging 6 yards in the second half and 2 yards in the first half. That's just how Georgia has been. I think Georgia plays a cleaner game this time, forces some turnovers against Auburn. I think the Dogs win 31-10. I would take Auburn in the points, maybe a late TD for the Tigers. This is a game in which Georgia has to establish it early and beat the brakes off of Auburn. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen because I do respect Auburn's defense and Hugh Freeze's, well, not offense because, I mean, they don't have a quarterback. But watch, Georgia's going to give up 100 points because of their secondary. I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. I think Georgia's going to come out angry and upset with how last week ended. And I think they're going to wow the crowd and beat Auburn comfortably. Well, 21-point win is a good cushion, in my opinion. Maybe Auburn gets that late TD. I guess I have to take Auburn in the points. Definitely in the first half with how bad Georgia has played. But I want to see the Dogs blow the brakes off of Auburn. I want this to be a 59-0 type deal. No offense to Auburn. Georgia almost lost to Auburn last year, and you could have made a case that Georgia should have lost to Auburn. So I'm going to take the Dogs here, limit the rush game for the Tigers. I don't think Jarquez Hunter is going to do much through the ground. Probably catches a few passes, but I got the Dogs 31-10.
Yeah, so the only way I think Auburn sticks around in this game is we talked about the explosive playmakers, and that's why their yards per pass looks a lot better than it actually is. Georgia, to me, so far this year, this has been the worst tackling under Kirby Smart, at least the last 4 or 5 years. So maybe they're able to get it out quickly to their playmakers and they miss tackles. They're able to make big plays. That's really the only way I think Auburn hangs in this football game. They've been in every game, like you said. The problem is they have untimely turnovers. We saw it last week with Peyton Thorne throwing that pick six. Like, first of all, why even throw in there? To me, just run the ball because Oklahoma proved they could not score really in that game. So that didn't really make any sense to me. But then, I mean, you throw that interception and it's basically over from there because both those teams are just so offensively challenged. And I think it's just going to be too hard for Auburn in this game. And I would agree with you. To me, you're going to be right about Georgia on this season if they come out in this game and this first half is a struggle. If this first half is a struggle, that is no longer, like, to me, couldn't be changed. It's just a pattern in who you're probably going to end up being the whole year, which would suck for you guys. But that's, I mean, realistically, after this many games, I don't really see it changing at that point. It'd be, 5 games into the season. So, almost halfway. I don't think that's going to happen. I think you're going to come out and just beat the crap out of them right away. I have Georgia in this game 41-14, so I'm taking the 24.5 points. I think Georgia covers that spread. I'm also taking the over here, barely, I guess, 55. So I'm going to do that, and then let's take some of your comments. Jackson agrees.
I hope you're right. I don't want to sweat this game out.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I said, you'll be able to know from the first half how this season honestly is going to go for Georgia. If they're going to play around with Auburn after just getting beat by Alabama, then you're probably right. They may not make the playoff. Auburn is going to get spacked by Georgia, SG1, obviously, an Auburn fan. Auburn will blow it and lose by 3 or get blown out and lose by 35. I kind of agree with that. I don't think there's a middle game here. I don't think this is a 14-point game. I think this is a close game or they're going to get absolutely steamrolled. Jackson, I don't know about that. I think it's more of a quarterback situation. I just don't think they have a guy there at all.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is they were the much better team against Oklahoma. They were and to be honest with you, they were way better than Oklahoma. And they found a way to lose. They missed 3 field goals. Listen, if they make 2. They missed 2 field goals. If they make both field goals, at worst, we're going to OT. And then, Auburn probably chokes that away anyway. But it's just sad how Auburn has found ways to. You lost the game because you threw a pick 6 up 5. Name another team that's done that.
By the way,
5 with 4 minutes left.
And they were at midfield. It's not like they were in the red zone where I could say, okay, you're taking a chance to throw a touchdown. Like, why are you? I just don't understand throwing in that situation versus because you shouldn't be believing in Peyton Thorne. What has he shown you that you're like, you know what? I trust Peyton Thorne to throw this football right now. It doesn't make any sense to me. That's why I'm not even really angry if I'm an Auburn fan at Peyton Thorne for that. Obviously, it's a bad throw. I'm more angry at Hugh Freeze. Why are you calling that? But it is what it is. I didn't really understand the call when I saw it. I was obviously rooting for Auburn in that game because I hope Oklahoma goes 0-12 every year, but it did not turn out that way. And then Tony says there's no Auburn fans here. Why are we talking about them? Hey, this is going to get cut up, and they're going to watch this. Hopefully, I think our most viewed preview last week was Arkansas and A&M. I think got like
Yeah, that's weird.
500 or 600 views. Yeah, Arkansas fans are good, man. There's an SEC video on here that I was taught. It was a random video. It was me and an Arkansas guy, and it got like 8,000 views. I was like shocked, but they're good fans.
Yeah, Arkansas and A&M, they both have a relatively strong fan base, and they're very loyal. So I give them credit. I like both those teams.
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense for you at least. You play both on the road too. So
yeah, I don't.
Be interesting.
I don't hate Arkansas fans because I mean they historically don't really beat Texas, and then also I've never really interacted with them. I despise A&M fans.
Yeah.
I don't understand. They don't make any sense to me, but we won't get into that. We'll get into that a couple months from now when we play them. Now, this game is, in my opinion, the game I'm most excited for on the SEC slate. I'm very interested to see how South Carolina does coming off a bye week, and then Ole Miss coming off a loss. Very interested to see that, and especially I think you're playing a defensive line that's almost as good, if not or they're almost as good as the team you just played in Kentucky with Dylan Stewart and those guys on the South Carolina defensive line. Also, I didn't realize how old they were when I watched the LSU game. Like, all those guys are seniors. They decided to come back. So I'm very excited for this game. Ole Miss is favored by 9.5, which this is the one SEC game I bet. I took South Carolina, so I'm going to give a preview into that, and we can talk about why. I'm interested to see what Tyler has to say, but let's go through these stats. Mississippi or Ole Miss, even coming off the Kentucky game, is still 13th in the country with 40.3 points per game. They're still averaging 7.9 yards per play on offense, which is third in the country still. And then 5.5 yards per rush, which is 18th in the country, and 11.4 yards per pass still, which surprised me that's still up that high, and second in the country there. On defense, they give up 10.5 points per game, which is fifth in the country. 3.8 yards per play, which is fifth in the country, and then 23.44% on third down conversion rate, which is fifth in the country. So they're really good across the board on defense. And then versus the pass, 6.4 yards versus the pass, which is 36th in the country, and 1.5 yards versus the run, which is second in the country. This Ole Miss defense has been for real so far this year. Let's get to South Carolina. They are 26th in the country in points per game with 34.3. They average 5.2 yards per play, which is 78th. They average 4.2 yards per rush, which is 72nd. So you're getting a theme here. They are not very good on offense. They average 8.4 yards per pass, which is their best category, 29th in the country. And then but this is crazy to me. They gave up, and I guess it shouldn't shock me. They were terrible last year on the offensive line. 15.84% sack rate. That is 15 sacks per 100 dropbacks. That is dead last in all of college football, 134th. On defense, 17 points per game, which is 20th. 3.9 yards per play, which is 7th. 3.1 yards per rush, which is 19th. And then 5.1 yards per versus the pass, which is 9th. So very good. And then getting to the quarterback, they're almost just as good as allowing it on the other side. 10.07% sack rate, which is 11th in the country. So this defense is for real for South Carolina, and it is carrying this team so far. Tyler, what do you have to say about this game?
Well, Ole Miss did their situation last week was just, like I said, it was a fluke. I'm sorry. I'm just being for real. I hate to be this for Kentucky. And like I said, I gave Kentucky where credit was due. Kentucky had 90 yards rushing. When is Kentucky ever going to beat somebody with 90 yards rushing? I'm just being for real. Maybe Ole Miss is the only team, I guess. But Ole Miss is very good on the rush game, on both running the football and pretty much shutting down the run. They had 90 yards rushing last week. If they can't run the football, a lot of their plays can't open up. I guess that's kind of basic for football itself. But I still think Ole Miss is capable of making it to the playoffs this year. They have a lot of talent. Probably, like I said, into last week, this is probably Ole Miss's best team that they've had in a very long time. And based upon talent, one of their most talented teams they've ever had. They have one of their best quarterbacks they've ever had in Jackson Dart. He didn't play terrible last week. I think his QBR was in the 80s. So again, it was a fluke situation. I'm actually going to ride Ole Miss here. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I know South Carolina just had a bye week, but I don't know what South Carolina's record is after a bye week. Last year, I know they lost. I think the year before that, they lost. And then the year before that, I think they lost. So they might be 0-3. They're either 0-3 or 1-2. But look who they've played. 9 points. Here we go with the 9 points. 9's a weird number. 9 is a number I always stay away from. Whether that's 19, 29, 39, or whatever. Anything 9s I would stay away from because it's just a weird number. It's rare that a team wins by 9 or loses by 9 or scores 9 points. So I would probably not bet this, but I'm actually going to ride Ole Miss here to win this game by more than 9 points, 9.5. That is. I bet you this line's going to fall into the 6 or 7 points because people are going to be telling you how overrated Ole Miss is, and I disagree. I think it was a fluke situation. I'm going to trust Jackson Dart on the road in a very hostile environment. You got to give Williams-Brice Stadium some credit here. This is a top 15 place to play, in my opinion. This is a tough place to play. Very underrated. I give South Carolina fans credit where credit is due, but I don't trust South Carolina's offense enough. I believe Sellers is playing in this game. He was banged up against LSU. I think he played against Akron. They just had a bye week, so they're going to try to run the football, and I just don't see it happening. I got to give Walter Nolan, who's pretty much a lockdown, up the gut type of deal. If you try to run in between the tackles on him, he's shutting you down, and he just is. Watch the Kentucky game as well. I like Ole Miss. I think they win this game 34-17.
Okay, so you would take the under then as well.
Yeah. I guess so, yeah.
So South Carolina honestly should be undefeated. They should probably be ranked at this point because they should have beat LSU. They kind of got screwed out of a couple calls there. And I think either way, if Lenora Sellers was healthy in that game, I think they win that game. That's the question I have as well. If Lenora Sellers is healthy, I feel confident in the bet I made. If he's not, I do not trust Robbie Ashford. So I'm definitely going to hate watching that and realizing I made a very, very stupid mistake. But what I think you're going to get a pretty low scoring game because both these defensive lines are very good at getting after the quarterback. And then the combination of South Carolina's offensive line is still very bad. I think you're going to get both. I think both these teams will probably combine for like 7 or 8 sacks. Honestly, I think you're going to see a race to the quarterback from both these teams. I'm going to take Ole Miss to win the game. Like I said, I think it's going to be low scoring. So I'm going to have it 27-20 Ole Miss. So I'm taking the under as well. Honestly, out of all the games we've gone through, I think that's my favorite bet. I would take the under pretty easily here. I think that environment with these defensive lines and honestly, the question of South Carolina with their quarterback, I would take the under here relatively easily. So that's my bet on this game. Let's see. Stop acting like Kentucky is a good team.
Oh, man. Yeah. They're not a good team until they play you, Tony. They're not a good team until they play you. I mean,
yeah, wait.
Goodness.
It was 3 games, right? Louisville already has 1 down, so.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that bet. Yeah, okay. So if you didn't know, if you're new here, me and Tony have a bet. He has the over on 9.5. He alt betted it with me. I think originally it was 7.5. Or it may have been 8. 7 or 8. He went an extra game and a half and said, I got Louisville over 9.5 wins this year. Well, guess what? There's already 1 down. So,
and they play Miami and Kentucky still. So
yeah, and they don't play Clemson, but they also, I think they play Pitt too, and Georgia. They already played Georgia Tech. Never mind. But Ole Miss is not soft. Ole Miss is not soft.
A. Drewster is here.
Yeah, thank gosh. Shout out A. Drewster. This is the man of the hour. He's a big hitter with our group chat. You got to shout him out.
Ole Miss is soft.
No, they are not. Not this year. They're not a soft team.
Defensively, I don't think they're soft. Offensively, I still think they're a little bit soft.
They're still. That's what Lane is. Not soft, but he's a finesse type of guy. And I'm gonna be for real. Finesse, you can't really out finesse a physical team. So you got to give Kentucky credit. That's why I said last week I like Kentucky in the points and the under. But I didn't think they were going to win, which,
Yeah, I think we both took the under, but I was on the opposite side of that. I just thought Ole Miss would be able to hold up and attack them down the field, and they weren't. And honestly, I was pretty underwhelmed with Ole Miss's weapons other than Trey Harris. Everyone else
Oh,
was
he's
like,
ridiculous.
yeah, he's really good.
Holy crap.
They're not physical besides Walter. O-line is so weak. I agree the O-line is not great, but I mean, I still think their defense is pretty physical other than Walter. Let's see. Next game up on the docket is Tennessee versus Arkansas. I would be shocked if we don't agree on this one. Tennessee's get favored by 13.5 points, so Arkansas is getting 13.5. The over-under here is 50. Tennessee coming off the bye, and offensively, 49 points per game, second in the country, 515 yards, fifth in the country, yards per play, 6.9, 18th in the country. Rush yards, 5.7, which is 15th in the country. Passing yards per play, 10, which is 9th in the country. And they only allow the quarterback to be sacked 5.48% of the time, which is 61st in the country. On defense, this is where the biggest improvements have been made. Opponent points per game, 8.3, third in the country. Opponent yards per game, 159, first in the country. Opponent yards per play is 2.8. That is first in the country. Yards per rush is 1.4. That is first in the country. Opponent yards per pass is 4.8. That is sixth in the country. And then this, I honestly thought would be a little bit higher at this point in the season. Sack percentage, they're getting to the quarterback 7.69% of the dropbacks, which is 41st in the country. So not as good there as I thought, but literally like top 15 in every other statistical category on offense and defense, which is insane. Almost top 10, I believe, actually in everyone. Arkansas on offense, 27.3 points per game, which is 65th. Yards per play, 5.5, which is 61st. Yards per rush is 4.6, which is 51st. Yards per pass, 7.1, which is 68th. On defense, opponent points per game, 25.3, 65th. Opponent yards per play, 5.5, 63rd. Opponent yards per rush, 3.7, 42nd. Opponent yards per pass, 7.4, 72nd in the country. They only get to the quarterback 4.2% of the time. That is 98th in the country. To me, this looks like I just don't understand how this is only 14. This is a complete mismatch. Arkansas at best has an average defense. At best, they have an average offense. And Tennessee, I think, is legitimately a top 10 offense with a top 15 defense. So how do you think this one shakes out?
Well, I got to give credit where credit is due. I thought Arkansas's defense wasn't very good, and then they kind of surprised me in that Texas A&M game. Their defensive front is actually pretty darn good. Landon Jackson, he had a real good game. He had his first sack of the season against Texas A&M, so I guess you can point to that. Oh, I mean, I feel like sacks are kind of skewed, especially nowadays, but I won't get into that. Arkansas's defense is actually relatively solid. I'll give credit where credit is due. They got really veteran DB in Hudson Clark as well. He can make those checks. I think that's their green dot guy. And then Landon Jackson, he's really, really good. Their interior defensive line is much better than what people thought. Arkansas should be 5-0. They should have beaten Oklahoma State, and they outplayed Texas A&M for almost 4 quarters. They kind of just once again, this is what Arkansas does. Sam Pittman, this is just what his career at Arkansas has been, giving away games as best as possible. That's just how they've been. I actually disagree. I think Arkansas will compete in this game. I said this all offseason. Arkansas was my team that I thought would kind of surprise some people, in which they would go 7-5, but they would pull a huge upset. This has potential to be that upset. Arkansas's front seven can compete against Tennessee's rush attack. They did a real solid job against Texas A&M, really for all 3 quarters until the 4th quarter, in which they were worn out. But the difference is Tennessee is just a much better team than Texas A&M. Let's just be real here. This is also a night game. I was going back and forth on this. I'm not going to take Arkansas outright, but I actually think they'll cover. I actually think this is going to be a closer game. This is a trap game for Tennessee. And Tennessee fans were arguing with me about this earlier this season. Well, no way. We had a bye. We had a bye week before we play Arkansas. They play Texas A&M. They always lose to Texas A&M. So I actually disagree. I think this is a trap game. This Arkansas team is a pretty physical team. They're a lot more physical than I thought. And oh, by the way, Taylor Green, if he can limit these dumb turnovers, this team could easily be 5-0, but they can easily win this game. This is a very solid Arkansas team. I like Tennessee to win in the end, something like 30-20. I'll go 31-20. Tennessee on the road gets it done late in the fourth quarter. Sampson's going to be a little bit too much. I think they'll wear down Arkansas. But I'm telling you, I like this Arkansas team. I think they're much better than what people think.
Yeah, I don't think they're bad, but you hit on the point. I just think Taylor Green's going to make too many mistakes.
Yeah.
I just don't trust him. Like he has talent and it shows up, but then there's games like the Oklahoma State game where they should have won and he kind of throws some passes he shouldn't have or makes stupid mistakes that he shouldn't have. Did the same thing in the Texas A&M game, and you're doing that so you're going to have to do he's going to have to play his best game he's played in a college uniform. That's what's going to have to happen for them to win this game. I just don't see that happening. I would agree with you. Overall, I think Arkansas has definitely been a solid football team. But this is by far the best team they played. Like Oklahoma State, let's be real, is probably like the 40th best team in the country. And they completely blew that game versus them. And then Texas A&M, only because of the schedule, I'm even considering them in the playoff race. If they had the Georgia schedule, I wouldn't consider it at all. I just think Tennessee goes and dominates. And you said the bye week doesn't matter, but I do think it matters that Arkansas is coming off an emotional rivalry game, and then they play at Tennessee. I just think that's hard to get back up for. So I think Tennessee, I think they're going to win rather easily. I think it's going to be 34-17. So I would take Tennessee covering. I would also take the over here. To me, like I said, the only way Taylor Green's going to have I don't know if anyone, I'm sure you do, Tyler, the Zach Calzada performance that he had versus Alabama when he had a lights out performance that he never had again. That's what's going to take from Taylor Green. If he doesn't have that, they are not winning this football game.
He just has a lot of talent. I love him. I feel like, though, if he comes back next year, and some other pieces as well as they get to 6-6, next year Arkansas could be a legit playoff team. That's how good they could potentially, but let's not talk about next year. I think Arkansas is going to. I think they might be able to run a little bit more on Tennessee than what people are expecting. Quinton Jackson is probably the best running back in the SEC. He's insane. And oh, by the way, they got some really good wide receivers, which could open up that run game. So I actually think this is good. This is going to be an interesting matchup. And oh, by the way, it's a night game in Fayetteville. So I'm actually excited for this game. This is going to be a fun one, in my opinion.
Is Andrew Armstrong playing? I thought he was nicked up. Do you know?
Yeah, I know he's nicked up, but he's just been toughing it out. He shouldn't have, in my opinion, I don't think he should have played in that second half against Texas A&M. He did, and he still made plays. He's yet to catch a receiving TD, but that's kind of what Arkansas is. They get down to the red zone, they're just going to run the ball with number 10 or number 22. But I think he's I think he might be out. I think he's either a game time decision or out, which that doesn't really help you out. But I don't. He probably needs some rest, in my total opinion. But he also played in the Texas A&M second half. I mean, this guy's been taking a lot of shots. You go back to the Auburn game, the very first play he's getting taken out by an Auburn DB. So he's been, and that's another point you could make. Well, they play two physical teams in a row. How much left do they have in the tank? They kind of need, this is a point where Arkansas does need that bye week. But I'm giving Sam Pittman a lot of benefit of the doubt. I mean, just look what he did last year against LSU. This after losing to BYU at home in an embarrassment. They come and compete. They also played Alabama very, very close. They played Ole Miss very, very close a couple of years ago. That's just what they do. He just can't finish it in the end. And that's why I think Tennessee wins for sure, but I do think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to watch it for sure. It's going to be a really good game to watch. I like when Texas, I didn't like the result, but they have really good fans down there in Arkansas and Fayetteville, and that was a fun game to watch with the atmosphere and everything. Let's get into some of your comments. Bama will win it all. They will be scary when they put it together. I mean, maybe. We'll see. Yeah, I was going to say, they kind of already put it together.
You don't just beat Georgia without doing that, but okay.
Bama isn't winning anything. It's Texas forever. Yep, he knows right there. Shout out to Spaz on the voice of college Oregon.
Tony will not admit it, but he's a voice of college football fan. He watches every single live stream. You know it, Tony. Come on. We give you shout outs and your flowers too, so you got to give us something.
That catches us up there. So let's jump into the last game. I was shocked when I saw this line. UCF is favored in the swamp by 3 points after losing to Colorado by a shit ton, by the way. So I was surprised by this. Let's look at UCF stats first. 33.7 points per game. That is 28th in the country. Yards per play is 6.5. That is 24th in the country. Yards per rush, obviously, we all know Gus Malzahn loves to run the football. 5.5 yards per carry. That is 19th in the country. And 283.3 yards per game, which is 5th in the country. Yards per pass is 9.2, which is 14th in the country. And yards passing a game is 228th, which is 16th in the country. Let's get to the defense. 32 points per game, 97th in the country. Yards per play, 6.1, which is 99th in the country. Yards per rush, 3.4, which is 28th in the country. And yards per pass, 8.1, which is 96th in the country. And they do not get after the quarterback whatsoever. 2.61% of the time. That is 121st in the country. Now onto the Florida side, 27.3 points per game, 64th in the country. 6 yards per play, which is 40th in the country. 4.7 yards per rush, which is 48th in the country. 7.8 yards per pass, which is 44th in the country. And then on the defensive side of the ball for Florida, 34 points per game, which is 105th in the country. 6.4 yards per play given up. That is 107th in the country. Yards per rush, yards per rush, 4.8 in the country, which is 93rd in the country. Yards per pass, 9.2, 121st in the country. Remember, there's only 134 teams. And then they only get after the quarterback 4.4% of dropbacks, which is 94th in the country. These are two, be honest with you, god-awful defenses. Neither of these defenses are very good, so I expect a lot of points down in the swamp unless weather prohibits that. We will see. But Tyler, what do you have to say?
Well, remember when we first started this show and we were talking about Billy Napier being fired, and I said I bet you it would be after the UCF game. Now I said, watch what's going to happen. UCF after their bye week, they're going to lose Colorado convincingly, but then show up in Gainesville and beat the crap out of Florida. Well, what just happened? They got absolutely humiliated at home in front of the big noon, which is weird because the game wasn't at noon, in front of the big noon crowd by Colorado. And oh, by the way, they come in as a 3-point favorite. Florida's defense is horrible as a whole. They gave almost what they give 300 something rushing yards to Texas A&M. And okay, cool. Texas A&M's a good rushing team. You know who's an even better rushing team? UCF. This to me, this is going to be a fun game. It's going to be a weird game. This is Gus Malzahn for you. He's up and down. If you ever watch, this team's probably going to finish 8-4. They'll figure a way out to, if they even play Houston, to lose to Houston, but they'll beat Utah. This is Gus Malzahn for you. He literally just did it. He had a come from behind win against TCU, and then turned it around, had a bye week. You know who you're playing? You're playing Colorado, who just won on a Hail Mary, to be honest. 2 of them in which got lucky with a fumble against Baylor. And then you lose by 30 points, gave up rushing yards too. This is Gus Malzahn. He's the same coach every week. I like Central Florida here. I think this is going to be a shootout. And it's hard for me to see Florida actually limit the rush, but they did have a bye week. So I guess if Sunbelt Billy, I guess we'll call him Billy Napier, if he's able to fix that defensive line, then okay, then they'll have a shot, but I don't think so. I think KJ Jefferson's going to be able to run the football. RJ Harvey's very, very good, very underrated in college football. He's still in college football. I think this is his 6th or 7th year, believe it or not. I like Central Florida here. I think they'll score. I think it'll be a 41-35 upset. Well, not upset, win against Florida, and Billy Napier gets fired Sunday.
I completely agree. If they lose this game, he's going to get fired. Billy, look at me, brother, right here. I'm believing in you. I'm taking Florida in this game. I do think it's going to be high scoring. This is truly a coin flip game to me. I would not be shocked with either result. I would be kind of shocked if this is a lower scoring game because, like I said, I think both these defenses are atrocious. It's going to be interesting. I think the key to this game is honestly how Florida deploys their quarterbacks. Like, are they going to be switching on and off every other possession? Are they going to do what they did versus Mississippi State, where every third possession DJ Lagway comes in? I just don't think long term that is a good solution. You got to go with one of these guys for a full game, or if you have a package for DJ Lagway on third and short, fourth and short in the red zone, fine. But you can't be doing that. That works for Mississippi State because Mississippi State's the worst team in the SEC. UCF's better than Mississippi State. So if you do that, they're going to beat you. And you will be gone. Like Tyler said, I completely agree with that. Like if he loses this game, he will be fired right after on. Basically. And I'm going to take Florida. I do think they're going to win. I think they'll figure out some things during the bye week that are able to help them out. And I've never believed in KJ Jefferson. I see the talent and everything. I just don't believe in him. That's going all the way back from when Texas played him, and he proved me wrong that night. Maybe he'll prove me wrong again, but I'm going to take Florida to win this game. I think it's like high scoring, basically what you said. I'm going to say 37-34. So we're both going to take the over here really easily. I think we're both doing it by over like 10 points. We're just on opposite sides here, but it's going to be an entertaining game. It might be a shit show, but it'll be entertaining.
I agree. Yeah. Florida, it's kind of interesting because, well, I already know UCF's defense is horrible, but Florida's defense was supposed to be not much better than what it was last year because they actually had a good defense, but somewhat liable. And it's just been absolutely horrific. I just don't get it. 33 points to Texas A&M. Isn't that the most points A&M has scored this year? They gave up 330 yards rushing, as well as they gave up, 40 to Miami, obviously, 30 to Mississippi State. Or I guess they gave up 21, but Mississippi State got, stopped at the goal line. I think it was over 450 yards. Come on. Yeah, for me, I think it's simple. Take the over on this game. If you are betting, just forget about picking a team. Just take the over. And I believe it started at 58.5 when it came out. And Florida was also a favorite when it first came out by a point. So already up to 3. Something fishy's going on, and I don't know what it is. But maybe I shouldn't have taken UCF. But I like Gus Malzahn, as a lot of you like the B-boot read option. Gus Malzahn.
Noah Long says, didn't KJ run y'all out of the building? The whole freaking team ran us out of the building. They had like 300 yards of rushing in that game. So yeah, they killed us. And KJ Jefferson was definitely part of that. I forget there was another guy, and it wasn't Rocket Sanders, but there was another running back that just killed us that night. I forget.
Yeah, isn't it AJ Green from now he plays for Oklahoma State?
It might have been. There was like
0.
I think Malik Hornsby had like a shit ton of rushing yards too in that game.
Too.
There was everyone. It had like over 50. I think they had 5 guys or 4 guys over 50 yards rushing. So yes, their whole damn team got a carry and ran all over Texas that night. Yeah, that was the night you could tell in Sark's eyes was like, yeah, this is going to be a lot longer rebuild than I thought it was going to be. But hey, it's worked out better for us than it has them. So I'm okay with it. But I think we're on opposite sides of every game. So most likely Tyler's going to kill me on this again. I'm trying to think because you took A&M. I took Missouri. No, did you take Georgia? Or I took Georgia.
I think I took Georgia outright, but in the points I actually said, screw it, I'm going Auburn.
Okay,
until
so we're on
Georgia
opposite
proves
sides.
me wrong.
We're on opposite sides of this. We're on opposite sides of every game. So if the last 2 weeks have been what's going to happen the rest of the year, then Tyler's probably going to beat me in every game. So I will say when we do the over and unders, I think when we agree on it, it's happened more times than not. I'll have to go back and look and count up the records, but yeah, I think there's some obvious over and unders here that I would definitely be willing to take. But guys, that has been the 3rd edition of the SEC show. I really appreciate you guys being here. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe down below. Share this out with your friends, family, neighbor, whoever it may be. Really helps out. You can find Tyler right there on X or Twitter. I'll leave it up for a second at TylerBoy_722. And you can find me, Matthew MS97, right there on Twitter as well. I will be back on Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern time to talk Texas. And Tyler and I will be right back here again Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So again, hit that like button, subscribe. That has been the 3rd edition. Thank you, Noah Long, for being here. He said he'll be back. We appreciate that. Have a good week, guys, and weekend. Enjoy your football. Thank you.